This project is a multiple part project designed to give students a real world simulation of completing the accounting cycle for a business, which means recording transactions and creating financial statements. To simulate the real world, this project is open book, open note, and transactions will come in the form of business forms like this. Your job is to analyze what is going on in the transaction on this business form and then enter it into the journal. In this video, I will guide you through analyzing this particular form to make sure you start off correctly. Also, to simulate the real world as much as possible, you are to complete this without assistance from me. I may be able to answer basic questions about the project itself, but for most accounting questions, like what's the account that should be debited or credited, I will likely direct the question back to you and ask, what does the textbook say? How about your notes in the videos? Because in the real world, you can't continually ask your supervisor how to do your job. If you want to get feedback from your colleagues, also known as your classmates, that's fine, but everyone must turn in their own individual work. Students turning in another student's work as their own will receive a score of 0, as well as the person who loaned their solution to that student. Now you can locate the list of your classmates' names on the People tab of Canvas. Right here. And you can even contact them directly through Canvas messaging. So this project has 16 total business forms that you will get to journalize and then later post. So in future parts of the project, we will post the journal to the ledger and create a trial balance. In another part of the project, we will record adjusting and closing entries and create the financial statements. At this point, you have not learned about adjusting and closing entries, so it's nothing you have to worry about for this part of the project. So let's look at the project instructions. This is required reading. Now, I don't like to read the documents from here. I always double click or single click here, and then I download it, and it opens up here on Chrome. And now I can view as much of it as I want. All right, Accounting 111, project instructions. You must follow these instructions carefully. Part 1, journalizing source documents. Now these business forms, which we saw just a bit ago, we saw Form 1, are our source documents. Due date, see the syllabus, because that can change from quarter to quarter. And now this is important. You've been hired as the accountant of Sullivan Realty. So anytime that we see a business form with Sullivan Realty, know that that is the company that you are working for. As a reminder, if we are working with, now remember this is Form 1. This is the first form, which we will get to analyzing in just a bit. But notice it looks like this is a deposit ticket. So it looks like somebody deposited something in their bank account. Who deposited it? Sullivan Realty. So since we work for Sullivan Realty, this means we, Sullivan Realty, must have made a deposit into our cash account. So that's critical to understand who you're working for. And you were hired by John Sullivan. He's the owner of Sullivan Realty. So if you see a little memo like this, a little sticky note, and it says it's from John Sullivan, know that that is your boss. And it even tells you, from the desk of John Sullivan, owner of Sullivan Realty. So Mr. Sullivan started the business on June 1st. And then look at this transaction. This is our first transaction. This transaction happened on June 2nd. So we're starting the company, we're starting the recording the transactions for the company from the very first start of the company, which is what the next sentence says. This is the company's first month of business. You will record transactions for the business from the very first day of business. So in other words, their account balances prior to this first transaction were all 0 because this company was new. Then next it says follow these rules when journalizing the source documents, also called the forms. Notice it says right here, this is Form 1. So the forms are ordered by this number, so you know which one to do first, which one to do second. And there's 16 of them. It says at the top of each journal page, enter the appropriate page number. So let's go look at the journal. Here's the journal. Print as many of these pages as needed. Remember, we're going to be recording all these transactions, all these forms, so we'll have at least 16 transactions in this part of the project. So we click here, and then I want to download the journal, so I'll click here, and then open it by clicking here. Now we can see the whole thing. So switching back to my instructions, it says at the top of each journal page, enter the appropriate page number. Because you are journalizing the very first transactions in the company's history, start with page 1. So what that means is right here, you're going to start with page 1. And then when you get this sheet filled up, print out another one. And what do you think the next page will be? Page 2. So if you end up using 5 of these, you'll have page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5. So students often forget to fill in this page number, and also don't forget your name. So remember, you're required to do this by hand, because if we do these things by hand, you'll learn better. So here's a picture of mine. I'm going to be doing the journal along with you, at least for this first transaction. So I've got my name, Sir Rex-a-Lot, which was my official stage name when I was a famous rapper. And notice I put page number 1. Hopefully your handwriting is better than mine. All right, let's see what else is in the instructions. Enter the date for each transaction in this format. So if it was December 25th, you put 12/25/2019, if the year, of course, was 2019. The date is entered only once for each transaction on the same line as the first debit account. So let's look at the first transaction, in other words, Form 1. What was the date for this? June 2nd, 2014. So in our journal, we're going to put 6-2-2014. So here's a picture of my journal. Notice I put the date in, and notice up above it says MM-GD-YYYY. That's reminding you it's 2 digits for the month, as in if it's December, you put 12 instead of DEC, and then DD means day. So just like 6-2-2014. Now if you have big writing like mine, you might have to be careful to squeeze everything into the boxes. Next part of the instructions. In each transaction, list debits before credits. Just like we do in My Accounting Lab, always list debits before credits. And then indent all credit accounts. Now in My Accounting Lab, you don't need to indent because there's no way to indent, but we will be indenting our credit accounts on this journal when we're filling out by hand. And then this is probably the number one thing that people forget. Leave a blank line between each transaction. This makes it easier to read the journal. Now, if you are careful at taking notes, in the ledger, remember I'm talking about the ledger now, not the journal. In the ledger, you do not skip a line between transactions, but this is the journal. In the journal, you do leave a blank line in between transactions. And I even have a big note at the bottom of the page. It says, note, leave a blank line between transactions. F, do not split a transaction onto 2 different journal pages. Keep the debits and credits and comments all on the same journal page. So it's okay to have a lot of blank lines at the end of the journal page. If you're not sure if you're going to skip over to the next page, just leave a whole bunch of blank lines and just print out another page and start at the top. But just don't forget to label the next page, page 2. Journalizing must be done by hand and not in Excel. Remember, we learn better if we do it by hand. Now, this is the part that's quite different from what we've been doing in my accounting lab. In my accounting lab, they've been having us enter the comments or explanation for some of the journal entries. And to be honest, most of them were very lame. They left out really important details. So H says, at the end of every transaction, enter comments about the transaction, especially extra information that would not be otherwise known, such as a form number. So on your comments for all of your transactions, you should have the form number. Where do you find the form number? Form 1. It's really important to have the form number on there. Also, you would have other additional information, such as, notice what is this? What is happening? Let's analyze this a little bit. It says accountant, that's you. This is a copy of my deposit slip. I invested $12,000 cash in the real estate agency along with $3,600 of office equipment. Xerox copier, model XM342. So this information here is extra information that's critical. It's a Xerox copier and the model is XM342. That needs to appear in your notes. Why? Because when we learn later about something called depreciation, you're going to depreciate each asset individually. And if you just have an account called office equipment and has a whole bunch of different purchases in office equipment, how do you know which office equipment goes with each transaction? You don't know unless you put information like this, Xerox copier model XM342, into the notes. But we'll journalize this transaction together in just a little bit, and then you'll get to see more examples of that. Okay, so the form number should go in your explanation or comments, whatever you want to call it. The name of the vendor. So if we bought gas from Shell Oil, then the Shell Oil would be the name of the vendor. If we sold something to a customer on account, then you need to have the name of the customer. Otherwise, we don't know who owes us that money, if there's an invoice number or a check number, etc. This is very important because these comments written here are often referenced later. So in other words, 3 months from now, your boss might ask you, well, what office equipment, because you're going to use the account office equipment. If the journal entry just says office equipment, your boss says, well, which office equipment was it purchased? If you don't have this Xerox copier model number in the comments, you would say, I don't know, and you'd probably get fired. Let's see what's next. Scoring for each transaction in the journal. 1 point for the date, 10 points for each account name, 10 points for each debit and each credit amount, 1 point for the comment, 1 point for formatting, such as skipping a line between transactions, listing the debits before the credits, indenting the credit account, etc. Obviously, neatness counts. If I can't read it, it will be marked as incorrect. Number 6, use a chart of accounts below to enter the transactions. So let's say we bought that copy machine. Which account are you going to use? There is no account called copy machine. You're going to use office equipment. Don't call it equipment. Don't call it copy machine. You have to use this chart of accounts and use these names exactly, office equipment. And since I'm here, this is really important. Let me zoom in on this. There are going to be some accounts that you have not been taught how to use, such as accumulated depreciation, salaries payable, income summary, See, what else have we not learned about? Depreciation expense and miscellaneous expense. We have not learned about those accounts. Just because an account is on here also does not mean that you have to use it. So in this first section, you should not be using accumulated depreciation, salaries, payable, depreciation expense, miscellaneous expense. Okay, so just because there's an account there doesn't mean you have to use it. So again, 6, use the chart of accounts below to enter the transactions. You can only use the accounts listed. You cannot add accounts or use different names. You must use the exact account names. Now, when you're journalizing this, you don't have to use the account number. The account number will be used later when we post to the ledger. And number 7, it is permissible to audit each other's numbers. In other words, you can check with another student and say, oh, what did you get for the second transaction? But each student must complete their own work and turn in their own work. Turning in someone else's work will result in a score of 0. Also, loaning your work out and having someone else copy it and submit it will give you a 0. So let's analyze this first transaction together. This is Form 1 from Canvas. So the company is just starting, and we have a deposit ticket for a company called Sullivan Realty. Who is that? That's the company you work for. So, in other words, we, the people that work at Sullivan Realty, this company deposited some cash. How much cash? $12,000. But there's also something else going on with this transaction. From your boss, it says, this is a copy of my deposit slip. So this is the deposit slip, Form 1. John invested $12,000 cash in the real estate agency. So Sullivan Realty apparently is a real estate agent. So we will sell, or he sells houses, and then he's going to earn commissions on the houses that he sells. Anyway, he also invested a $3,600 copy machine. He considers it office equipment, and it is technically a Xerox copier model XM342. So let's analyze this. Let's analyze the thing that's easiest to understand. Is cash involved? Yes. We have $12,000 of cash. So, do we have more cash or less cash? We have more cash. So we look at our accounting grid. If cash is increasing, is that a debit or a credit? It's a debit. So in the journal, under description, I'm going to write the account name, cash, and then I'm going to put the debit, $12,000 of cash. All right. So let's see what else is going on. It says he's also invested a piece of office equipment, which is a Xerox copier. So we look at the chart of accounts, and remember we said you have to use the accounts here. So notice again, there is no copy machine account, so we have to use this account, office equipment. And what type of account is it? It's an asset. Later on we'll learn what a plant asset is. Just for now, you need to know that all these assets are assets. And there's liabilities, owner's equity. Here's our revenue account, commissions earned. That happens when we sell a house and we get paid for it, and then we got a bunch of expenses. Anyway, back to the office equipment. So let's think about which direction this account is going. Do we have more office equipment or less office equipment? We have more office equipment. So look at the accounting grid. Office equipment is what type of account? Remember, if you ever forget what type of an account is, just go back here to the chart of accounts, and it tells you right here. All of these are assets. Here are the liabilities. Here's your equity. Here's your revenue. Here's your expenses. So office equipment is a plant asset. So it's an asset. Since this asset is going up, we have to debit it. So in my journal, notice I put office equipment as a debit. I did not indent it because this is not a credit. And how much is the amount? $3,600. Now notice we're not done with our account, with our transaction yet, because the debits do not equal our credits. So our debits are 12,000 plus 3,600. So we need what? $15,600 of credits to balance this out. So what is the account that we use when there's an investment? It's capital. So let's look at the name of the capital account on our chart of accounts. And the capital account is called John Sullivan, capital. Don't write just capital because they don't have an account called capital. They have an account called John Sullivan, capital. So in my journal, notice I've indented and I put John Sullivan, capital, and then the credit amount is $15,600. Now we need to fill in our explanation. The first thing that should go in your explanation is Form 1, so you don't forget. That's critical. And then, so what's going on here? Let's put owner invested cash and office equipment. And the other key item that you have to have in here is Xerox copier model XM342. Now, if your handwriting is big, you might take up multiple lines of the journal. That's fine. So you can use as many lines as you want for the comments. You will not get deducted for having too much information in there. Of course, you don't want to write a book. If you're writing a book for every transaction, or a novel for every transaction that you do on the job, you probably won't last very long on the job because you'll be slow. Additional information that you could put on here would be the Bay Bank, but I did not do that because I'm assuming this company has only one. Another comment that you could put in here that's optional is the name of the bank, Bay Bank. I did not put that in there though because if you look at the chart of accounts, this company has only one cash account, therefore they have only one bank. And don't forget, we have to skip a line between transactions. So let's go and look at the next business form. I'll get you started on that one. So we're now looking at the project part 1 on Canvas. So I'm going to click on Form 2. I'm going to download Form 2. Open it up here. So let's analyze what's going on here. Notice it says Form 2. So this would be the next transaction you're going to journalize. So what kind of a business form does this look like? Does it look like, notice it says pay to the order of, and then it has John Sullivan signing it. It has an amount, a date, a memo. Does this look like a check? Because that's exactly what it is. So who wrote the check? Sullivan Realty. So it looks like our company, the company we work for, is paying $3,300 to Miller Property Management Company. And what is it for? It says rent for June through August. So how many months is that? 3. June, July, and August. What month is this? This is the beginning of June. So if it's the beginning of June and we're paying for June, July, and August, what type of account is that? I'm not going to tell you what it is. You should know that. But here's my hint. On June 2nd, have we used up all of this $3,300 worth of rent? No, on June 2nd we haven't used up any of it. So therefore it has a future value. So that is my hint for you. And then in my journal, notice I'm skipping a line and I'm putting 6-2-2014. And then from here on out and the rest of the project you are on your own. Go ahead and consult with your classmates if you want. And don't forget to skip a line between transactions. Print out as many journal pages as you want. Number the journal pages consecutively. In other words, page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4. Write as many comments as you want, but you will be deducted if you don't have the most important information. It's pretty obvious what is the most important information, so don't forget to review your instructions. And that's about it.